Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Posner, and I'm the founder and host of the Don't Panic Project. Every week, I provide engaging conversations to help empower, inspire, and educate people suffering from stress, anxiety, and depression. Today's guest is Corrie Shanahan. Corrie is an expert in helping executives rapidly improve performance and productivity. She works with firms all over the world, including Mars Inc., Discovery Communications, and the IMF. Her experience in corporate life at the World Bank, the United Nations, Delta Airlines, NBC News, and Reuters gives her a unique perspective on how to build a successful career while also having a rich and rewarding life. Corrie is the author of Do It, Mean It, Be It. Right here. Move my thumb. I'll show this a few more times. And do it, mean it, be it, the keys to achieve success, happiness, and everything you deserve at work and in life. So welcome to the Don't Panic Project, Corrie.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. So first off, you were born in Ireland. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and yourself? How did you end up in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, how did I end up in Washington? That was certainly not part of the plan. I was born and raised in Ireland, and this is sort of pre-Celtic Tiger. So my generation, as we graduated college in the early 90s, a lot of us left, and so I left. Although I headed in slightly an unusual direction. A lot of people, moved to the States or to the UK. I went to Moscow because I had studied Russian, and so I started my career in Moscow as a journalist. I spent a number of years there, and then in the Middle East.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I realized that I didn't have an awful lot of control over my life because I was in television news, and I transitioned into corporate communications, first with Delta Airlines in London, and then I moved to the UN in New York. And so that's how I ended up in DC, because from New York, I moved to Washington to take up a role with the World Bank. And a number of years ago, I set up my own business, and really using that experience of working in large organizations in different countries, in different environments, to help people improve their performance or their team's performance, to really to grow a business, to develop a program. And so that's how I ended up here.
Nice. So let me ask you this, before we get into methodology that you use to help people and companies grow their business, a major theme in your book is work-life balance. And, in some of the work that I do, for instance, I know a partner in a major law firm who is really successful financially, but every morning he's actually in the fetal position on his bed because he's so miserable in his job. I know a woman in the finance industry who has she's very successful, well-paying job, and she goes to the bathroom and cries, 3 times a day during her normal workday. So there's something off with that work-life balance. Now, so when you were working in your corporate career, did you come across this quite often, and did that help kind of spur you on to move on into becoming your own boss? And also, was that partly the impetus for writing this book?
Absolutely. I mean, I essentially wrote the book for the people that you were describing. But I wrote the book that's in the preface because I was tired of hearing people describe themselves as being utterly miserable. So not being happy at work nor at home, and being kind of torn and sort of strung out, and living rather miserable lives, although, as you described, on the face of it, looking as though they were quite successful or ought to be successful. And also, we're in relationships that looked from the outside, that they intimate relationships that looked successful. So I wrote it for them because life is actually long, I think. So rather than life being short, life is long, and that is a long time, decades in some cases of being miserable. It was also partly the impetus to leave and be my own boss. I had always wanted to work for myself. But but thinking about why are people that unhappy in the workplace? So you sort of, people think that moving up the ladder is the goal, and then they get further up the ladder and they're really not very happy up there. And I think, for one thing, I think the concept of work-life balance is absurd. I think it's a myth. I think it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you even just think about the idea of balancing. So that suggests you're in some sort of precarious position where, if you tilt to one side or the other, you will lose balance and you will fall. So I think the concept makes no sense. I think what people tend not to think about, because they think in a compartmentalized way about their work and their life, their personal life, so professional and personal, and they separate the two. And so what I try to do in the book is talk about how you can integrate the two and think about your life as one life. So having one great, meaningful, worthwhile life that has professional success, it has personal success, but the goals and the things that are important to you are intertwined, and you don't have this sort of bifurcation of your entire being, which is, I think, what you're describing in some of the people you've been working with.
Yeah, no doubt. And heck, I was there. I was in a dead-end job, and I knew it for a long time. And it was really hard to take those steps to move out of that position. So as an executive coach, what are some of the ways that you help people take those first steps? What would be some of maybe the exercises you do, or?
Well, it depends what's going on, right? So it depends whether somebody is looking to change their own reactions, their own behaviors in a situation in which they actually want to stay. So in other words, they see other colleagues functioning well and enjoying what they're doing and living a full life. And then I also work with people who want to make transitions, who are looking to create new careers and roles for themselves, or transition into a new organization. I think one of the things to try and figure out first is it them or is it you? And this is something I'll often explore with a coaching client. Figuring out whether the situation you're in is really more about the organization or the people you're working with, and not you, is actually often rather difficult. So if you're inside, so for example, you're inside a company, you're in a role, and things are very tense or very difficult, and you think, if I just tried harder, if I was more organized, if I could just improve my relationship with that person, or if I could reach this goal, and then they would be happy with me, whatever it might be. So the drivers are different for different people. But sometimes it's really figuring out, if not you, it's them. This is a dysfunctional setup. This is not normal behavior. I mean, if you look, at sort of the recent news in terms of sexual predators in the workplace. I mean, for a long time, we thought this was kind of normal. It was normal that, so-and-so was a bit of a jerk and hit on people. You wouldn't want to get stuck alone in an office or a hotel room, not a hotel room, but in a hotel corridor with a certain colleague. And now that has changed. That's not normal. And so helping people figure out what's normal, what's me, what's my responsibility, and what's actually the environment in which I'm in is often really important. So we'll often start there and try to figure out whether it's you or them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I noticed you have a number of exercises in your book, and most of them require writing certain things down. So it's, hey, write your mission statement down, or write a list of things that you like, or things that you're not happy with currently. Write where you see yourself 5 years from now. So a couple of questions. So what would be the first exercise that along those lines that somebody should do if they are feeling stuck?
Oh, I think that's a great question. I think the first thing is to write down all of the things that are going well.
Interesting.
All of the things that are good in your life. all of the things, you know, the people who care about you. I wrote, I have a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to on my website, CorrieShanahan.com. But this month's, December's newsletter is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically, you know, starts with sort of basic needs and works its way up to sort of self-fulfillment and self-actualization. And, you know, if you just start with the fact that you're probably warm and dry, you know, you are not homeless, you are not hungry, and you literally start writing down all the things that are good. I think that's a really great place to start, because we tend to lose perspective. Our perspective tends to be, you know, we're always looking at who's doing better, who's got the bigger car, the bigger boat, the bigger house. We tend not to look at the people whose lives have been ruined in many ways, right? Whether it's something catastrophic, whether it's personal, a loss, a bereavement. And of course, you know, we deal with those things ourselves, right? Our lives are not necessarily smooth by anyone's reckoning, but we're generally doing quite a bit better off than several billion other people on the planet at any given time. So I think that's a great place to start.
You know, I love that. And as you know, I teach mindfulness, and I teach peak performance and stress management through mindfulness techniques. And what you're really describing is a concept of gratitude. And there's a lot of different ways you can practice gratitude. And you can write down 3 gratitudes every day, or you can go through this, you know, kindness mantra as part of your meditation, or you can make a practice of giving thanks to people, or just even smiling at people that you normally wouldn't smile. So you're kind of changing, you're kind of flipping a switch from maybe looking at things in a negative way to looking at them more positively. And there's a lot of research behind it. So I think that that's an awesome place to start, because so many of us do get really caught up in just this negative self-talk, especially at work, when you feel like you're not being appreciated for the work you do, or you feel like you're not being recognized for the raise or the promotion. You really tend to increase this negative self-talk and negative talk about your place of work also. So I think that practice really flips the switch on that mindset. And that's so important, because the other thing with that negativity is we tend to really get caught up in it, and we tend to ruminate constantly about it. So if you can just bring awareness to some of the things that you should be thankful for, it can instantly stop your mind from going to all the negative. So I think that's a really great suggestion.
And it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean,
right.
You know, and I think about the concept of sort of making an effort, right? Or, you know, growing up in Ireland, you know, there was nothing that, like, you know, a brisk walk couldn't fix. Why don't you go out for a brisk walk, get some fresh air? I mean, those concepts which seem, you know, sort of old-fashioned or something, but there's a lot of, as you say, there's a lot of research behind the idea of appreciation and gratitude, and then also of just starting to do something. So literally a brisk walk. I mean, when you're feeling down and you're a bit miserable, going outside and taking a walk will help will literally change your perspective. But also can have an impact on your mood. Not everything's going to be solved by a brisk walk, but it's definitely a good place to start. And I'm a big believer also in incremental change. We have a tendency to want to change things wholesale, to make sweeping changes, to have an utterly different life than the one that we have, right? Whether that's at home, at work, altogether. And I think what's really underrated is the idea of incremental change, like making small changes and small steps. Because what happens, you know, those sort of laws of physics and momentum, is that as you start making those small changes, you build a little bit of confidence. You start sort of, making connections. You build momentum, literally and figuratively, for further change. But this idea that you're going to kind of, from one day to the next, behave quite differently or feel differently or think quite differently after sort of, patterns of behavior have been laid down for years, I think is unfair to yourself. I think that's really, you're doing yourself an injustice, and also putting a great weight on willpower. I think willpower is vastly overrated. You're far better off just starting a small routine, something really small. Replacing a herbal tea, for that second glass of wine or that second drink in the evening, and then just doing that for a few days and seeing if it sticks. And then you find you sleep better, your mood is not as low the following day, whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, one thing that we just touched on and you mentioned in your book was talk about a meditation practice. So do you have a practice? Just curious.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Andy Puddicombe, who's behind Headspace. And I like Andy for lots of reasons, including the fact that he's so easy on the eye, which helps. But he's got a great app, and he's got something for everyone and every occasion. So like right now I'm on, you can do his, any length of time, but you can do guided, unguided, you can do sessions on themes. So right now I'm on a pack about regret, which is really helpful. So this idea of noting, the goal is sort of, letting go of the regrets that we hold and that perhaps start to accumulate as we get older. But he uses the technique of noting. So noting that wave of regret about certain issues or incidents or decisions that you made in the past, which cannot be undone. And I love that. So I'll pick a different pack. Kind of the packs usually run for 30 days. And then you pick a different pack, and I usually do that every morning for 20 minutes. And I notice when I haven't done it for a couple of days. So does everybody around me.
How do you feel when you haven't done it for a few days? Because
I'm often, it's a bit like going without exercise for me. So I'll often get a little bit edgier. My concentration's not so good. I'm a little bit crankier. I'm not quite as settled. I'm generally, I'm not as content. I'm not as calm. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Same thing. If I go a few days without sitting, I can feel it. I feel much more scattered. I feel a little more on edge. I feel like I might just be a little quicker to snap at, my wife or kids or something like that. Just triggered a little easier. It really is amazing, the power of having a meditation practice. No doubt. And
it's a shame it's not. It reminds me of things like, why isn't it taught in schools, right? Because it would really help. The work that you're doing is about improving performance. But
yeah, it is starting to be taught in schools quite a bit now. Actually, I've worked with a number of schools, and a lot of schools are starting to have a mindfulness curriculum, and it's great, especially nowadays. Kids with these damn things. People need to learn how to take a little bit of a mental vacation, because they just can't put their phones down, and especially kids are always worried about social media and, why didn't this person Snapchat me or text me, or why wasn't I tagged in this post, or what, so it's very important for kids. But, you were just talking about something I feel is pretty important, and also I think is somewhat of a theme in your book, but you were talking about the pack that you're doing in Headspace is about noting your feelings. And that actually is a really powerful tool, the ability to note your feelings. And you were specifically talking about regrets with this particular pack, but that's what mindfulness really is. It's this higher level of awareness of your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions. And you know, there's research out there that says 90 to 95% of our thoughts actually occur on the subconscious level. And 80% of those thoughts are negative and recurring. So, and we have 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So it's an amazing amount of thoughts going on. And a lot of them are negative, and they take control of us. So by the act of just simply noting them or bringing this higher level of awareness, we kind of bring them out into the forefront, and we can then move through them a lot easier. And that's really kind of what meditation is all about. But I want to relate it to your book, and getting back to, you know, again, you have so many exercises that you discuss in the book, and many of them are writing exercises. Again, writing lists, and 5 years from now, where I see myself, and what you're really doing is bringing awareness by writing those exercises. By doing those exercises, you're bringing awareness to your feelings, what may be holding you back, maybe what your mission statement is, or so forth. So again, what you're really doing is bringing this higher level of awareness to things that are holding you back. So, you know, I know there's a lot of research as well into the power of writing things down. So very, very important concept also.
Yeah, I think there is an important aspect of that. A friend teased me that I should have done a tie-in with Moleskine, the Notebook people, since there's like.
So I wasn't the only one that noticed the amount of writing, but I think it's great. You know, just these exercises.
I do think it makes a difference. I mean, there is something about putting down. I mean, one of the things I do is. Which is actually a technique that was pioneered by Robert Fritz in Newfoundland, Vermont, around writing down in the present tense the outcome you want in the future. So that can be about something as small as planning a party, or it can be about your career, your life, or relationship. But writing down in the present tense as though it was currently happening. In other words, you'd say, for example, it's December 2018. And I have, you know, whatever it might be, but you write it in the present tense about describing what you're currently doing. And then you write in the current situation, which is, you know, December 2017, you know, this is where I am, this is what's going on. And just the act of writing those two things down, it's almost like sort of a split screen, right? You have the where you'd like to be and the where you are, and putting the two of them together creates this sort of tension and a clarity about what's the difference and what's in between. And I just found that, I mean, I use that for all sorts of things. I'll use it for travel planning, for a trip, and it helps. It's more than a glorified to-do list, because it helps you stay focused on what is the outcome that you want. So the enjoyable, the memories that you want to create. I mean, I did it for Thanksgiving just recently. How did I want Thanksgiving to go? So rather than just being a list of things that have to be done, it's much more about how you want it to be. And that just helps. Writing it down helps sort of focus you a bit more, makes it more real. So yeah, I am a big writer.
Excuse me?
I'm a big believer in the power of the pen.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I just wish I enjoyed writing a little bit more than I do, but
really short. I also believe in being very concise about things. I think people have. I
think that's important. So to write things in the present sense, I mean the present tense. I have heard or read, I don't remember exactly where. Again, the power of these I am statements. So you're putting yourself in the future, maybe a year or two, or maybe even just a couple of weeks, like you said, for Thanksgiving or something like that. And you would just say, I am currently enjoying my job. I am in doing something I like. I am working with people that I get along with. Is that correct?
Exactly. So you'd say, for example, so say it's a work situation. Um, you would describe, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm enjoying the people I'm with. I'm making a meaningful contribution within the company, and I'm appreciated for that. And then the current reality might be, I'm actually not. I'm a bit miserable. I'm actually feeling a bit threatened, and there's some talk about a reorganization going on. Now, this isn't about thinking your way. I'm highly skeptical is too mild a word for it. I completely abhor the sort of idea that if you can just wish it and hope, or what is the thing called here, the secret, you kind of just
Right.
that things will be different.
Yeah.
That tends not to work.
Yeah.
That tends not to make any difference at all. But realizing, so what is important to you and what is not there, and then trying to figure out, okay, so how could I make it different? And you may, I mean, for different reasons, people choose to stay in different situations, right? So in that case, you're making that as a choice. I think that's a really important thing to realize. You're making it as a choice because of something that you hold as more important. So it might be financial security. You're at a particular juncture where you've got kids in school or kids heading to college, or you've got parents or whatever the obligations might be, and you don't actually want to make a radical change now, even though you're unhappy. But that's actually a choice. That's totally okay. But it is a choice. Other people don't do that. Some people quit their jobs or don't stay in the job. So you're not doing it. You're not actually being forced to do anything. And I think that's something that people forget, this idea that no, I have to, because I have to do this. Lots of other people don't do it. So for example, I have to make the mortgage. You're choosing to, but you could choose not to. Now there's consequences of not paying the mortgage, right?
Right.
But if you're doing it as a choice, it's because it's actually more important to me that we have stability, and I stay in this home or in this neighborhood with my family, and so I'm willing to sacrifice my kind of shorter term happiness in this role in order to do this. That often flipping that around and realizing that you're doing it for something that you hold as more important often just takes away that feeling of powerlessness. You're doing it, you're putting up with a less than ideal situation for something that you think is really important. And so that's great. That's a decision. That's your choice. So I think getting a little bit clearer about nobody is forcing us to do anything. The only thing we do sort of involuntarily, breathe and sleep and I guess eat, but even then, right? I mean, you're choosing. Almost everything is a choice. Staying alive, being here, being alive is a choice. Right?
I've never really looked at that, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. So, what was your last corporate job that you were an employee? Mm-hmm. Actually,
I had a really fun role at a large trade association. So it's called the Institute of International Finance, and essentially it's a trade association for the global financial industry. And It's headquartered here in Washington, D.C. They have about 500 member financial institutions, mostly banks, but also insurers and asset managers. So yeah, that was really fun. So I was managing director for marketing and communications, responsible for all of their events and membership programs. And it was a really fun organization because I came in at a time, I was recruited by the new CEO to help rebrand them, turn them around. And they had their previous CEO had been there 20 years. So they were in need of a little bit of a reconfiguration. So that was really fun. And that was one of those kind of, it's not a startup because it's there, but you get to kind of do a lot of new things and change things around. So that was very satisfying. Yeah, it was fun.
Wow. So how did that then spur your desire to become, this executive coach or this corporate change agent now?
Well, a couple of things happened. One, and probably the most practical, significant, was that I got a green card. As a result, I had been, as a foreigner and an employee of international organizations, you're not actually on track for permanent residency or citizenship. You're what's called a non-resident alien, which means, it's just like you're not really here. So I did that for about 15 years, which is, completely legal and normal. But as a result of leaving and going to the trade association, I was able to get a green card rather rapidly. So that worked out really well. So that was sort of the intention. They needed an overhaul and a cleanup, which we figured might take about 3 years. I did it in about 1.5 years.
Wow.
And then I wanted to set up on my own. So I was then in a position to be able to do that. So that was really how it came about. And I'd always wanted to work for myself, but I hadn't been legally able to up until that point.
And it seems very much like a natural transition to what you just, had this corporate change opportunity, and hey, now I can do this as a consultant and work for yourself. Brilliant. Love it. One other little thing I want to just touch base, which you talk about quite a bit in your book, which I find fascinating, and it comes up in a lot of conversations. Again, this is called the Don't Panic Project, and we try to help people overcome stress and anxiety. And there's something you spend some time on in the book, and it's the curse of perfection. And people, I think, have a lot of anxiety. I think the curse of perfection prevents a lot of people from moving forward in work or life or whatever it is. I think it really puts a stop sign in front of people and prevents them from taking that step, whether it's, trying to publish something that they wrote, or get up in front of people and speak about something they're passionate about, or go to their boss and ask for the promotion because they don't think they did a good enough job. And just the curse of perfection. I won't go into the details, but there are 4 points that you kind of bring up. It's your focus on detail can leave you missing the big picture. You fear failure and are often hesitant to act in case you won't be right. It's exhausting, and it's really hard on people around you. And, I was reading your book, and those concepts each one was like a little light bulb going off, and I could see myself in my past being held back by all of these things, and still to this day, quite frankly. The 4th one, it's really hard on the people around you. I know there are times I feel like I have to do everything, and I should just let my kids do this because, it'll be fine, but.
Yeah.
And
it's a really good point. It's so refreshing to hear you talk about it. It's definitely something that is much more prevalent than I think we realize, right? And causes much more unhappiness and anxiety. So the curse of perfection really is that, being so hard on yourself and not letting things go, but also not trying new things for fear of failure. So there's an underlying lack of confidence about it being good enough. It's fine. It's good enough. I don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be done perfectly. It's good enough. So that can apply to a project at work. It can apply, and it's also a question of sort of not wanting to displease people often, like not wanting them to come back and go, well, this isn't really good enough. What will happen if they come back and say, well, actually, no, it isn't good enough. You're gonna need to, I'm surprised, I'm disappointed, you're going to need to do this again. And the anxiety that can trigger. And so really, I think the curse of perfection, one of the ways to lift it is just to practice in small ways, things being good enough. So Thanksgiving is always a great example of people getting very anxious about how perfect things might have to be done. Or with your team, if you're not letting the people on the team actually do the work and move it along, but you're sort of nitpicking it over and over, and you think it's because they're not good enough, or they don't have the ability, or they're not doing it well enough, and being able to use your judgment as to whether that's really true or not. And what would happen if you just kept pushing back to get them to do it rather than you taking it on? Because I think that's often a bit of a cop-out. that, you know, they can get better and people can take things on. And the classic example is children, as you say. So the idea that, you know, it's okay for them to fail, to get a bad grade, to turn the thing in late, because if they don't, they're never going to learn how to do it. If you're sort of there catching everything so that everything ends up sort of perfect. It's like the science project, you know, you go into, I don't know if you had this experience, you go into the auditorium where all the science projects are, and you're like, there is no way fourth graders did this. This is not possible. This is simply not possible. Somebody's behind these science projects. It's everywhere. And then you feel inadequate. Maybe my kid is like, maybe I should have made more of an effort or helped her with it. Or, you know, maybe that is part of what you're supposed to do. And you start to doubt yourself. So that comes back to the confidence piece. But I think confidence and self-esteem, right, which sort of go hand in hand, are the key to a lot of the anxiety that people have in the workplace. And just caring less about what other people think. I think that's really important. If you could bottle that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, this is spurring on just a note I made in the book here. You know, just to get over that fear almost of people are afraid to do things because they're afraid they're not going to be good enough, and you know, and in your book, the more frequently we do it, the better we get at it, and the less effort it takes. And you know, it goes back to the concept that you were talking about a little bit before. Just, you know, one tiny step. So if you're afraid to make these phone calls, just, you know, force yourself to make that one sales call or follow up with the one customer. So I mean, I also think we could tie in the other exercise that you were just talking about to kind of get over maybe this kind of fear of the fear of not being good enough, you know, and that perfection holding you back. And you could probably just write down yourself in the future, right? I am speaking to my boss. I am doing this. I am moving forward. Whatever it is that you were being held back. If you probably just go and do that little writing exercise and pretend it's 2019 and write in the present tense where you are.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the taking some action, because I think that just trying it, so handing something in less perfect than you might otherwise, just try it and see what happens. Just, you know, try pushing back or saying no to somebody. Like, does the world end? Well, no. They were a bit irritated. Yes. Did you survive? Yes. And then you try it again. You know, so I think you put your finger on something there about practicing it and trying it and seeing what happens.
Yeah, got to take that first step. You know, you could even look at it like major corporations. Microsoft, the first iterations of these operating systems were far from perfect, but you know, that's the whole idea: is you get them out, and when they're out there, other things come to light that need to be fixed, and if you sat there looking for the perfect solution, you never would get the thing out there, and that holds you back more than anything, quite frankly, because once it's out there, you get good feedback, and if you can take feedback and not take it, be defensive about it, and not take it personally, and take it as an opportunity to improve something, then hey, you're going to be moving right along, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you put your finger on something that I come across quite a lot, which is when people are in transitions, and when they would like to be in a transition, when they would like to make a move or make a change, and they want to figure out what the next move should be. So very often people will ask me to help them think that through. The challenge is that you can't really think your way to that. You actually have to try. You have to actually take some action. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you, for example, in a career setting, you know, quit and then go and then try to find a new thing. but you might start figuring out ways to try to do the type of role or a different environment to sort of practice. So almost moonlighting. But so, for example, I had a client who really wanted to move out of the commercial sector into a more philanthropic nonprofit world. And so rather than quitting her job sort of right away, she actually started getting more actively involved in a couple of nonprofits. And in fact, what she discovered was actually that it was rather frustrating in how they were organized and how they ran. She sat on a couple of boards, and she actually realized she would not want to be employed in one of those organizations and working for them. She noticed the lack of sort of commercial discipline. And so she realized that actually I'd much rather be on the philanthropic side of this and get involved that way than actually make a career change and go and work in a nonprofit. So I thought that was an interesting example, right? So, because that would have been, potentially quite a painful lesson to have learned if she'd actually made the move. The other thing on that is this idea of, I work with a lot of people who are in their sort of last big corporate role, and they're figuring out what they want to do next. And what I will advise them to do is to take, time off to think about that. That's usually not very helpful, because all of a sudden your time gets kind of, you get sucked into a whole bunch of things. People want to catch up for coffee and lunch, and you start doing things that you didn't have time to do before, and suddenly your entire day is full. And you haven't actually moved forward with the sort of the larger question of, what do I want to do now? So I do recommend with clients who are looking to create what I call a portfolio career, right? So they're leaving the last big full-time job. They don't want to work full-time, but they want to do something interesting. They want to be on a couple of boards. They want to maybe do some philanthropy. Is to, before you leave, you should be having, in sort of the last 12 to 18 months ideally, but certainly 6 to 12 months, having conversations and setting up one or two things that can give you some structure, give you perhaps a little bit of status, a little bit of a sense of, this is what I'm doing now. So you have that in response to other people's inquiry, because that often creates anxiety itself. So what are you doing now? Well, I'm thinking about kind of what I want to do next.
Right.
And often you create great anxiety. So you're better off having just, one or two, they can be really small things that you're doing, advising somebody over here, sitting on a small board here. But it gives you a little bit of purpose, and it keeps you in the mix. Because sitting alone by yourself, you will not think your way to the sort of entire new career, the portfolio career that you want. It's pretty much, impossible. And you start losing momentum, and inertia sets in. It becomes very difficult. So makes
perfect sense. Corrie, we're running a little bit short on time. I want to thank you so much. I think this was a great conversation, a lot of really, really actionable tips and ideas that people can take away immediately and start to implement in their lives and their work immediately as well. So Corrie, again, Corrie Shanahan, do it, mean it, be it. And do you have anything new that you're working on that you can tell viewers about?
Yeah, so the book Do It, Mean It, Be It is available on Amazon, and you can find it via my website, which is
it is a great book, really easy read, a lot of really good tips and strategies for helping yourself move to the next level.
And right now I'm working on another book, a new book, which should be out sort of end of next summer, late fall, which is on the company of the future. So that's really aimed at business leaders who want to position themselves and their companies to really succeed in the future. So it looks, looking at things like, global firms, remote working, working with millennials, different generations. And so that should be quite fun. And I'll be writing about that in my monthly newsletter as I go along. So you can sign up for that also at my website, the free monthly newsletter.
And what's your website?
It's CorrieShanahan.com, CorrieShanahan.com. Shanahan, SHANAHAN.com.
All right. Thank you very much. This has been a really great conversation. I appreciate your time, and we'll speak to you soon.
It's a pleasure always. Thank you, Jim. Take
You're
care.
welcome.